The clock on the nightstand glowed 2:57 a.m., its red digits slicing through the dim motel room like a warning. Jack's nomad Sullivan lay sprawled on the sagging bed, the faint rumble of distant trucks humming through the thin walls. His leather jacket hung over a chair, patched with the faded emblem of the Iron Promise, a coiled serpent around a broken chain, symbolizing bonds that outlasted the storm. Sleep had been fleeting, haunted by echoes of old regrets, but this night the phone shattered the silence. It buzzed once, twice, then a voice, small, frantic, laced with terror, cut through the line. "Please, save my mother. They're coming. The snow. Help!" The words tumbled out in a gasp, muffled by wind and what sounded like sobbing. Static crackled, then nothing. The line went dead, leaving only the echo of that plea hanging in the air like smoke from a dying fire. Jax bolted upright, heart pounding against his ribs. He snatched the phone, staring at the unknown number, the screen's glow casting harsh shadows across his weathered face, lines etched from years on the road. A scar tracing his jaw from a long-ago brawl that had cost him more than blood. Who was this? A wrong number? A prank in the dead of night? But the fear in that voice, it clawed at him, stirring something buried deep. He redialed, but it rang into void. No answer, just the quiet tick of the clock now marking 2:58. He swung his legs off the bed, boots hitting the worn carpet with a thud. The room smelled of stale coffee and motor oil, remnants of his last pit stop. Jax wasn't one for ghosts, but voices like that didn't just vanish. He pulled on his jacket, the leather creaking like an old friend's whisper, and stepped out into the biting cold. The parking lot was a sea of frost under sodium lights, his Harley parked like a faithful steed, chrome dulled by the chill. Snowflakes danced in the air, silent and relentless, blanketing the world in white oblivion. Back inside, Jax fired up his laptop, the screen flickering to life on the rickety table. He had contacts, old ones from days when the club ran deeper networks than most cops dreamed of. A quick text to Razor, his tech-savvy brother in the Iron Promise. Trace this number. Now, kid's in trouble. Minutes stretched like hours. The only sound the hum of the heater struggling against the winter's grip. Then, a ping. Coordinates. A stretch of highway 50 miles north, deep in the pines where the road twisted like a serpent itself. "Signal died there. Weak, but that's the last hit," Razor replied. "Be careful, Nomad. Storm's closing in." Jax didn't hesitate. He revved the engine. The Harley's roar tearing through the night, headlights cutting a path through swirling snow. The road ahead was a blur of white and black, tires gripping ice-slick asphalt as he pushed north. Wind whipped at his face, stinging like needles, but he leaned into it, mind racing faster than the bike. That voice, young, desperate, a child, and "Save my mother." It echoed a promise he'd made years ago, in a sterile hospital room that still haunted his dreams. Back then, he'd sworn to protect a family shattered by loss, but he'd arrived too late. The guilt had carved him hollow, turning a restless drifter into nomad, always chasing the horizon to outrun the what-ifs. The highway narrowed, flanked by towering evergreens bowed under snow. Flakes pelted his visor, blurring the world into a dreamlike haze. At mile marker 47, the signal's end, Jax slowed, engine idling low like a predator's growl. He killed the lights, scanning the shoulder. Nothing but drifts and shadows. Then, a glint, something metallic catching the faint moonlight. He dismounted, boots crunching through fresh powder, and knelt by the roadside. There, half buried in the snow, lay a pendant, small, silver, shaped like a tiny iron promise chain, its links etched with faint initials. J, S, and E.M. Jax's breath caught, frost forming on his exhale. This wasn't coincidence. He knew this piece, had given it himself all those years back to Ellie, a woman whose laugh had once lit up the club's bonfires. She'd clutched it during her final days in that hospital bed, whispering of her boy, begging Jax to watch over him if things went south. But the cancer had won, and Jax had walked away, too broken to stay. The boy. Could it be him? The voice on the phone, pleading for his mother now. He pocketed the pendant, its weight a cold anchor in his chest. Footprints, small ones, trailed off into the woods, fading under fresh snow. A struggle? Signs of something dragged, but no blood, just the eerie quiet of the storm swallowing secrets. Jax's mind flashed to the club. Brothers scattered across state lines, bound by oaths thicker than blood. If this was Ellie's son, that promise wasn't dead. It was calling him back. He pulled out his phone, dialing the emergency line for the Iron Promise. "Razor, it's Nomad. Alert the crew. Full muster at dawn. We've got a ghost from the past and a kid who needs saving." Voices crackled back. Affirmative. Engines already warming in garages from here to the border. 50 bikes, maybe more, ready to ride through hell if honor demanded it. As the first grey light of pre-dawn crept over the horizon, painting the snow in muted silver, Jax mounted up again. The pendant burned against his heart, a reminder that some debts never froze over. He twisted the throttle, the Harley surging forward into the whitening woods. Whatever had taken that boy and his mother, it wouldn't claim them without a fight. Nomad was coming, and the Iron Promise rode with him. The trail led deeper, snow muffling the engine's growl, but Jax felt the pull, like fate's iron chain unbreakable. Branches clawed at the sky, and in the distance a faint light flickered through the trees. A cabin? A trap? He didn't know, but the plea from 2:57 a.m. echoed louder now. "Save my mother." This time he wouldn't be late. What if you subscribe for more stories like this? Hit that button, and let's ride together. Word count, 872. The faint light through the trees grew steadier as Jax pushed deeper into the woods, the Harley's tires churning through thickening snow like a beast ploughing virgin earth. Branches scraped against his sleeves, whispering secrets in the wind, while the cold seeped through his gloves, numbing fingers that had once gripped triggers in forgotten wars. The pendant weighed heavy in his pocket, a talisman of unfinished business, pulling him forward like an invisible tether. Dawn was breaking now, a pale bruise on the horizon, but the forest clung to night, shadows pooling in the underbrush like spilled ink. He cut the engine 100 yards out, the sudden silence amplifying every creak of settling snow. Dismounting, Jax crouched low, his breath fogging the air in rhythmic clouds. The light came from a weathered cabin, its logs silvered with frost, smoke curling lazily from a stone chimney. No vehicles in sight, but fresh tracks marred the ground. Tire marks, wide and aggressive, leading to a side path swallowed by pines. Human prints too, small and erratic, overlapping larger ones that suggested pursuit. The scene spoke of haste, of fear etched into the frozen soil. Jax moved like a shadow, boots silent on the powder, hand resting on the concealed pistol at his belt. A habit from club runs gone south, not for starting trouble, but ending it clean. The cabin door hung ajar, splintered at the hinges, as if kicked in by impatience. He paused at the threshold, ears straining for sound. A drip of melting ice from the eaves, the distant hoot of an owl, but inside, nothing. Pushing the door wider, it groaned on rusted hinges, revealing a single room bathed in the flicker of a dying fire. The place was a ruin of interrupted life. A wooden table overturned, chairs scattered like broken limbs. On the floor, a wool blanket twisted in knots, as if clutched in desperation. No signs of struggle beyond the disarray, no shattered glass, no stains that hinted at deeper harm. Just the quiet aftermath of chaos. Jax's eyes scanned the walls, landing on a framed photo propped against the hearth. A woman with kind eyes and auburn hair, smiling beside a boy no older than 12, their faces lit by summer sun. Ellie. The resemblance hit him like a gut punch. The boy's features mirrored her. Sharp jaw, freckles dusting his nose. This was her son, no doubt. The photo's glass was cracked, a spiderweb fracture from some careless boot. He knelt by the fireplace, embers still warm, ashes stirred recently. A half-burned note fluttered in the draft, its edges charred. "Can't trust them. If anything happens, call the number on the back. Promise me, Jax." His name, scrawled in Ellie's hand, the ink faded but unmistakable. The back held a string of digits. His old burner line, long since changed, but somehow this plea had found its way through the cracks of time. How? Who had kept this alive? Jax pocketed the note, the paper crinkling like dry leaves underfoot. Outside, the wind picked up, howling through the trees as if mourning the empty space. Jax stepped back into the cold, circling the cabin. At the rear, more tracks dragged heels in the snow, leading to a narrow trail vanishing into the denser woods. He followed, the path steepening, roots hidden under white veils, threatening to trip him. 50 paces in, he found it, a child's mitten, red wool frayed at the edges, abandoned like a breadcrumb. The boy had been here, fighting the pull of whatever shadows had come calling. His phone vibrated against his thigh, razor right on cue. "Nomad, crews assembling. 30 confirmed. More inbound. What's the sit rep?" Jax kept his voice low, eyes on the trail. "Cabin's cold. Signs of a grab. Kid and woman, I think. Ellie's boy, that pendant. It's hers." A pause on the line, heavy with shared history. Razor had been there that night in the hospital, holding Jax's shoulder as Ellie slipped away. "Hell, brother, we're mobilizing. Coordinates locked. Ride back. We'll grid search from the highway." But Jax couldn't wait. The plea from 2:57 a.m. burned brighter than caution. He pressed on, the trail dipping into a ravine where snow piled in drifts like forgotten graves. At the bottom, a frozen stream gurgled faintly, ice cracking under his weight. There, half submerged in a snowbank, lay a woman's scarf, faded blue, embroidered with tiny iron chains, another echo of the club's symbol. Ellie had woven them into everything, a quiet nod to the family that had become hers. Jax's chest tightened. This wasn't random. Someone knew the iron promise. He knew enough to target what was left of it. A snap of twigs yanked him alert. Close, too close. He dropped low behind a boulder, pistol drawn, the metal cold against his palm. Through the trees, shapes emerged. 2 figures, hooded and bulky, trudging with purpose. Not locals, their strides were deliberate, packs slung over shoulders bulging with gear. One carried a rifle slung low. The other scanned the ground with a flashlight, beam slicing the gloom. Searchers or hunters. They paused near the stream, voices muffled by the wind. "Signal died here. Kid can't have gone far in this mess." The first one, gravelly tone, spat into the snow. "Track's end. Boss won't like it if we come up empty. Keep moving." They veered left, away from Jax, but close enough to smell the tobacco on their breath. Jax held still, pulse steady as a metronome. Not yet. Information first, follow, observe, then call the thunder. He waited until their lights faded, then slipped parallel, a ghost in the white. The trail climbed again, emerging onto a service road where tire tracks converged. A black SUV, plates obscured by mud, idling engine marks fresh. They were organized, these shadows, corrupt badges, rival crew, or something darker tied to Ellie's past. By the time Jax reached his Harley, the first rays of sun pierced the canopy, gilding the snow in gold. He fired up the engine, the roar a declaration, and raced back toward the highway. The club would be there soon, engines thundering like Judgment Day. But as he rode, the scarf clutched in his fist. Doubt gnawed. What had Ellie hidden that brought this storm? And could he keep his promise before the cold claimed more? The iron promise wasn't just a patch. It was blood oath, forged in fires of loss and loyalty. Jax leaned into the turn, wind tearing at his resolve, knowing the ride ahead would test every link in that unbreakable chain. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The highway unfurled like a silver vein under the climbing sun, Jax's Harley devouring miles as the forest receded in his mirrors. Snow clung to the shoulders in stubborn patches, melting into muddy rivulets that mirrored the turmoil churning in his gut. The scarf fluttered from his handlebar like a battle flag, its blue threads a stark reminder of the warmth Ellie once brought to cold nights around the club's fire pit. He'd given her that very one years back, during a rain-soaked rally when she'd shivered through a story of her dreams for a better life. Now, it was a breadcrumb in a trail of vanishing lives, pulling him toward answers he wasn't sure he wanted. Razor's voice crackled over the Bluetooth in his helmet as he crested a hill, the Iron Promise's encrypted line buzzing to life. "Nomad, we're at the rendezvous. Mile marker 40. 40 bikes locked in, brothers from 3 chapters, tanks leading the flank. He's got that old scout chopper warmed up for aerial." The words carried the weight of mobilization, engines idling in the distance like a herd of steel stallions ready to charge. Jax could picture it. Leathers patched with the serpent emblem, faces set in grim determination, the air thick with the scent of exhaust and resolve. These weren't just riders. They were the family he'd forged from fragments, bound by oaths, sworn over whiskey and wounds. "Solid copy," Jax replied, voice steady despite the wind's howl. "Hold position. I'm inbound, 5 mics. We've got hunters in the woods, 2 on foot, armed, tracking the same trail. SUV tracks organized. This ain't random." He downshifted, leaning into a curve where the road dipped toward a frozen river, ice glinting like fractured glass. The sun warmed his back now, but the chill of the pendant against his chest lingered, a cold pulse sinking with his heartbeat. Ellie's boy. Tommy, that was his name, fuzzy from memory but sharp now in crisis. 12 years old or thereabouts, with eyes that held too much shadow even then. What had pulled them into this frozen nightmare? A debt from her past, something Jax had overlooked in his grief-fueled flight. The rally point came into view, a gravel pull-off transformed into a fortress of chrome and loyalty. Bikes lined up in precise formation, riders dismounted and huddled over maps spread on a tailgate, steam rising from thermoses of black coffee. Tank, a mountain of a man with a beard like tangled wire, spotted Jax first and raised a gloved fist in salute. The group parted as he rolled to a stop, engine fading to a purr before silence swallowed it. Boots crunched on frost as brothers converged, faces weathered by roads and regrets, eyes questioning but trusting. "Talk to us, Nomad," Tank rumbled, his voice like gravel under tires. He clasped Jax's shoulder, the grip a anchor in the storm. They'd ridden through worse, bar fights that spilled into shootouts, lost brothers pulled from wrecks. But this felt personal, a ghost rising from the club's shadowed history. Jax swung off the bike, pulling the scarf and pendant from his pockets. They passed hand to hand, murmurs rippling like wind through pines. "It's Ellie," he said, meeting their gazes. "Her kid called me, 2:57 a.m., lying dead after the plea, found these at a cabin off the trail, signs of a grab, dragged tracks, splintered door, 2 goons in the woods, hunting. They knew where to look." The words hung heavy, stirring memories. Ellie had been one of them, patching wounds after runs, her quiet strength a balm to the club's rough edges. When cancer came, the Iron Promise had rallied, donations, vigils, but Jax had been the one she'd turned to in the end, extracting that promise with her last breath. "Watch over Tommy if I can't." He'd failed then, burying the guilt under miles of blacktop. Not again. Razor stepped forward, laptop balanced on his hip, screen glowing with satellite overlays. traced the SUV plates. Fictitious, but the make matches rentals from a shell company up north. Ties to some development firm pushing land grabs in these woods. Corrupt suits maybe, squeezing locals. Ellie's photo from the cabin. Pulled a match. She worked clean-up for one of their sites last summer. Could be she saw something, spoke out. His fingers flew over keys, pulling grainy images. Aerial shots of clear-cuts scarring the forest. Cabins like the one Jax found, marked in red. If they're silencing her, the kids leverage. Or bait. The pieces clicked, a grim puzzle of greed versus grit. Jax nodded, the fire in his veins matching the club's unspoken code. Protect the innocent, honor the fallen. We grid the ravine, fan out from the cabin. No guns drawn unless they force it. We're here for truth, not blood, but if those shadows touch the boy... He let it trail, the implication clear. Engines revved in agreement, a low thunder building as riders mounted up. Tank clapped Jax's back. Lead on, brother. The promise rides for Ellie. They surged forward in convoy, a serpent of steel coiling through the highway, dust and snow kicking up in their wake. Jax took point, the scarf tied to his wrist now, a blue ribbon against black leather. The woods closed in again, branches arching overhead like cathedral vaults, sunlight dappling the path in fleeting gold. At the cabin turnoff, they split, scouts peeling left and right, engines cutting to scouts on foot. Jax led a core team deeper, the ravine swallowing them in white silence, broken only by snapping twigs and muffled breaths. Half a mile in, a shout echoed, Razor's voice sharp over the radio. Contact! Fresh tracks, leading to a ridge overlook. Jax pushed harder, legs burning through snowdrifts, the air thick with pine and tension. They crested the ridge to find it, an abandoned campsite, embers smouldering under a tarp. Supply crates stamped with that same shell company's logo. Maps fluttered in the breeze, pinned with red flags, routes through the woods, circled sites marked acquisition. And there, half buried in a duffel, a child's backpack, monogram TM, zipper torn open, contents spilled like secrets. Jax rifled through it. School books, a crumpled drawing of a motorcycle club under a rainbow sky, and a small recorder, its tape whirring faintly when he pressed play. Tommy's voice, small but fierce. Mom said the bad men are lying about the land. They're burying something in the ground. Please, if you find this... Static cut it short, but the plea mirrored the phone call, a double echo of desperation. The wind howled louder, carrying distant engine growls. Not the clubs, but incoming. The hunters were circling back. Jax keyed the radio. All units converge. We've got the scent. Boys alive, close. Hold the line. As brothers fanned out, forming a perimeter of unyielding loyalty, Jax clutched the recorder, its weight a spark igniting old flames. Redemption wasn't a destination, it was this ride, this unbreakable chain linking past to present. Whatever darkness hid in these woods, the iron promise would drag it into the light, for Ellie, for Tommy, for the honor that defined them. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that danced like omens, but Jax felt the shift, from hunter to hunted, the tide turning on whispers of justice. The convoy's distant roar swelled, a symphony of vengeance tempered by vow, ready to shatter the silence. The ridge overlooked transformed under the midday sun, its sparse pines standing sentinel over the ravine like weathered guardians. Jax knelt by the spilled backpack, the child's drawing clutched in his gloved hand, a crude sketch of bikers circling a bonfire, shields against the night. Tommy's innocence bled through the crayon lines, a stark contrast to the maps fluttering nearby, their red flags marking scars on the land, hidden dumps, rerouted streams, secrets buried under the guise of progress. The shell company's crates loomed like coffins, lids pried open to reveal sealed barrels, their labels faded but ominous. Chemical residues that hinted at poisoned earth, the kind that silenced voices before they could shout. Razor crouched beside him, scanning the recorder's tape with a portable reader jury-rigged from Club Tech. Kid's smart. Hid this for a reason. Audio's fragmented, but there's more. Coordinates whispered at the end, pointing east, toward Blackridge Bluff. That's old mining territory, shut down years back but ripe for whatever these suits are hiding. His eyes narrowed behind tinted lenses, the wind tugging at his bandana. Around them, the iron promise fanned out, boots stamping a perimeter in the snow, rifles holstered but hands ready. Tank directed scouts with low grunts, his massive frame casting a shadow that swallowed doubts. The air hummed with tension, laced with the sharp tang of pine sap and distant exhaust. The convoy's roar, now a controlled growl, holding the line against the encroaching unknown. Jax rose, pocketing the drawing, its edges curling like a fragile vow. Blackridge Bluff, 30 miles out, a jagged escarpment where the forest met sheer drops, fog-shrouded even in summer. Ellie had mentioned it once, in hushed tones during a late-night ride, her voice carrying the weight of secrets she'd carried from a life before the club. Some places swallow people whole, she'd said, fingers tracing the pendant he'd given her. Had she stumbled on this corruption while working those sites? Seen too much? Spoken to the wrong ear? The thought twisted like a knife, sharpening Jax's resolve. He keyed the radio, voice cutting through static. All units, shift east. Target, Blackridge. Tight formation, eyes on the flanks. We're closing the noose. Engines thundered to life as the group remounted, a steel serpent uncoiling down the ridge. Jax took point again, the Harley surging ahead, tires biting into the thawing trail that snaked through the woods. Snow gave way to mud, splattering leathers in gritty protest, the sun's warmth a deceptive ally against the chill of pursuit. Flashes of memory rode with him. Ellie's hospital room, the beep of machines a dirge, her hand weak in his as she pressed the pendant into his palm. For Tommy. Promise me, Jax, you're the family we never had. He'd nodded then, words choking in his throat. But life had pulled him away. The road, a coward's escape. Now, that promise roared back, amplified by the convoy's wake, brothers linked in silent solidarity. The trail widened into a fire road, potholed and forgotten, flanked by rusting machinery from bygone eras, bulldozers frozen in time, their blades dulled by neglect. Jax scanned the horizon, visor reflecting the bluff's outline. A wall of rock veined with ice, caves yawning like dark mouths. As they crested a rise, movement flickered below, a black SUV identical to the tracks, crawling along a service path at the base. Two more vehicles trailed, lights off, kicking up dust that mingled with lingering mist. The hunters converging on their lair. Jax signaled a halt, the convoy idling to a hush behind a thicket of evergreens, engines purring like restrained beasts. "Scouts out," Tank murmured, selecting 4 riders for the advance. They peeled off on foot, vanishing into the underbrush with the grace of shadows. Jax waited, pulse sinking with the distant drip of melting ice from overhangs. Minutes stretched, the sun beating down now, sweat beading under his collar despite the altitude's bite. Then a crackle on the radio. Visual on the site, 3 vehicles, 6 tangos, perimeter fence, chain link with razor wire, central structure, prefab shed, guarded, no sign of the package but fresh drags inside the fence. The word package hung like frost, Ellie and Tommy, reduced to cargo in this web of greed. Jax's jaw tightened, the pendant a cold brand against his skin. These weren't random thugs. The operation screamed institutional rot, suits pulling strings from boardrooms, using muscle to bury the evidence. Land grabs for profit, lives as collateral. It mirrored the club's own battles, whispers of bribes and badges turned against the honest. But the iron promise didn't bend to corruption. They broke it with unyielding truth. He led the push forward, the group splitting into flanks that arced around the bluff's base. The air grew heavier, carrying the faint metallic tang of machinery and something sharper, diesel exhaust from idling generators. As they neared, the site's details sharpened, floodlights strung haphazardly, casting harsh pools of yellow against the rock face. Guards patrolled lazy circuits, their postures suggesting overconfidence, rifles slung casual. Jax dismounted a quarter-mile out, gesturing for silence. With razor and tank, he crept closer, using boulders for cover, the ground sloping into a gravel-strewn depression. From their vantage, the shed came into focus. A squat building of corrugated metal, door barred with a heavy padlock. Muffled voices leaked out, distorted by the wind. Woman's talking too much, kids leverage, but if the bikers show... A laugh, cold and hollow, cut short by a boot scraping gravel. Jax's blood ran hot. They knew of the iron promise, anticipated the ride. How deep did this rot go? A betrayal from within? Or Ellie's stand drawing lines in the snow? Tank's hand on his shoulder steadied him, a reminder of the code. Justice first, vengeance second. They retreated to signal the breach. Coordinated, clean, no shadows spilling into light without cause. As the convoy repositioned, engines whispering threats, Jax felt the chain tighten. Tommy's voice from the recorder echoed in his mind. The bad men are lying. Not anymore. The bluff loomed, secrets cracking under the weight of arrival. But as they prepared to move, a child's cry pierced the air, faint, desperate, from within the shed. It sliced through Jax like shrapnel, igniting the final spark. Now, he whispered, and the iron promise surged, a tide of loyalty crashing against the darkness. The promise wasn't words. It was this moment, engines roaring defiance, ready to unearth the truth buried in the bluff's cold heart. If this story's gripping you, smash that like button, and let's keep the ride going. The child's cry echoed off the bluff's jagged face, a raw thread unraveling the tension coiled in Jax's chest. It sliced through the hum of idling engines, pulling every rider's gaze toward the prefab shed like a siren's call. Tommy, alive, fighting, his voice a beacon in the metallic gloom. Jax's hand tightened on the throttle, the Harley's vibration syncing with the pulse of urgency. But he held back, eyes locked on Tank's nod across the formation. No charge. This was precision. The iron promises way. Cut the rot without becoming it. They advanced in waves, shadows merging with the lengthening afternoon light that painted the site in stark contrasts. Razor wire glinting like fangs, floodlights buzzing faintly against the rock. The convoy split silently. Bikes left in a concealed dip as the core team, 20 strong, leathers blending with the terrain, fanned out along the perimeter. Jax led the center push, boots grinding gravel under a low crawl, the air thick with the acrid bite of diesel and damp earth unearthed from recent digs. Pine needles crunched softly, masking their approach, while the distant river murmured below, an indifferent witness to the unfolding standoff. Razor flanked him, tablet clutched like a shield, feeding real-time scans from the scout chopper circling high overhead. Thermals hot inside the shed. 2 adults, 1 small. Guards at 3 points. East fence, main door, rover on the path. No heavy artillery, but they're twitchy. His whisper carried the club's tech edge. Honed from years dodging badges and borders. Jax acknowledged with a tilt, the pendant shifting against his ribs, a steady reminder that this breach wasn't for glory, but for the vow etched in silver and regret. Ellie's face flickered in his mind, her final whisper a ghost urging him on. Watch over him, Jax. Be the promise. They reached the fence first, wire cutters snipping through chain link with muffled snaps, creating a gap wide enough for passage. Tank's team took the east, a diversion of rolling pebbles and false signals drawing the rover away, boots scuffing gravel to mimic intruders. The guard bit, flashlight beams sweeping wild, his mutter carried on the wind. Check it, could be strays from the road. As he peeled off, Jack slipped through, Razor and four brothers tight behind, pistols low and holstered, hands open but ready. The ground inside sloped toward the shed, barrels stacked like silent sentinels, their contents a whispered threat of tainted soil and silenced truths. Close now, the shed's walls loomed, corrugated panels vibrating faintly from an internal generator's thrum. Muffled voices leaked out, harsh, clipped. "The woman's spilling about the dumps. If the kid talks..." A shuffle, then silence, broken by another sob, small and defiant. Jax's blood surged, but he signaled halt, pressing against the wall where shadows pooled deepest. The door's padlock gleamed, heavy iron mocking their haste. Razor knelt, tools flashing in a quick dance, picks and tension wrenches teasing the mechanism until it yielded with a soft click, like a confession unwillingly given. They breached in unison, door easing open on oiled hinges, the interior spilling dim yellow light and the stale scent of sweat-soaked fear. Inside, chaos frozen in time, a single bulb swinging overhead, casting elongated shadows across concrete floors, scarred by drags and scuffs. Ellie huddled in the corner, wrists bound to a pipe with zip ties, her auburn hair matted, face bruised, but eyes fierce, mirroring the woman Jax remembered from bonfire nights, unbowed. Beside her, Tommy curled close, his small frame trembling, the red mittens twin clutched in his fist like a talisman. No overt signs of harm beyond the restraints, just the weight of captivity etched in their widened stares. The two guards spun at the intrusion, hands fumbling for sidearms, but the iron promise was faster. Tank's team materializing from the flanks, shadows becoming steel. "Easy," Jax growled, voice low thunder, stepping forward with palms up. "We're not here for you. Drop 'em and walk. This ends clean." The nearer guard, a wiry man with a scarred knuckle, hesitated, eyes darting to his partner, a stockier figure already raising his weapon. But loyalty's chain held. Brothers closed the gap, disarming with precise grips. No blows landed, just the quiet click of safeties engaging on their own irons. Ellie met Jax's gaze, recognition dawning like dawn through fog. "Nomad. You came." Her voice cracked, but strength laced it, the years folding away in that moment. Tommy peeked out, fear yielding to wonder at the wall of leathers filling the doorway, the iron promise, real as the drawing in his pack. Jax knelt, knife flashing to sever the ties, his touch gentle as he helped her sit up. "The call. It was you?" he asked Tommy. The boy's nod, a silent bridge across lost time. "They took us from the cabin," Ellie whispered, rubbing her wrists, voice steadying. "I saw their operation, the barrels, the lies about the land. Clean-up crew found the waste dumps, poisons leaching into the water. I told a reporter, thought it was over, but they came in the storm, knew about you from the old note." Odin, her eyes flicked to the pendant around her neck, unbroken, its chain a defiant gleam. Jax's chest tightened. The promise hadn't faded. It had waited, pulling them all back to this reckoning. Outside, engines revved as the perimeter secured, scouts confirming the SUVs fleeing the bluff's base, cowards scattering before the full muster arrived. Tank radioed in, "Site's ours, no runners inside." Choppers got eyes on the tails, heading north, but we'll track. Jax helped Ellie to her feet, Tommy clinging to her side. The trio, a fragile unit, forged anew. But as they stepped into the sunlight, the bluff's shadow lingered. The shell company's web stretched wider, suits in towers pulling strings that demanded more than rescue. Justice wasn't claimed here. It was pursued, mile by unyielding mile. The convoy reformed around them, bikes circling protective, the roar of vow renewed. Jax mounted up, Ellie and Tommy secured on a spare with Razor's steady arm. As they rode out, the wind carrying the bluff's secrets into the light, Jax felt the chain complete, not broken but stronger, linking past losses to this hard one now. The road ahead twisted toward confrontation, But for the first time in years, Nomad wasn't running. He was leading, the iron promise's thunder echoing the beat of redemption's heart. The convoy thundered down the fire road, a steel river carving through the thawing underbrush, dust and gravel erupting in plumes that caught the slanting afternoon light like fleeting smoke signals. Jax rode point. The Harleys growl a steady anchor amid the symphony of engines. 40 bikes strong now, brothers weaving protective flanks around the spare machine carrying Ellie and Tommy. The boy's small arms wrapped tight around his mother's waist, his face buried against her back, the wind whipping his hair into wild tufts that mirrored the chaos they'd escaped. Ellie glanced back occasionally, her eyes meeting Jax's through the rear view, a silent gratitude etched in the lines of exhaustion, the pendant glinting at her throat like a reclaimed star. The bluff receded in the mirrors, its rocky maw swallowing the shed and barrels in shadow. But the victory felt fragile, a pause before the storm's true fury. Razor's chopper droned overhead, a mechanical hawk relaying coordinates. The SUVs had bolted north, tires screaming over rutted paths toward the state line, where jurisdiction blurred like fog over the river. They're pushing hard, 40 miles out, linking to Highway 17. Shell companies got a safe house there, per the chatter we pulled from their radios. Razor's voice buzzed in Jax's earpiece, laced with the static of altitude. Jax nodded to himself, throttle twisting harder, the vibration rumbling through his bones like an old wound reopening. This wasn't over. The guards at the shed were pawns, disposable muscle for suits who poisoned the land for profit, burying truths deeper than roots. The road smoothed into asphalt, the forest giving way to open scrubland, dotted with skeletal birches, their branches clawing at the sky as if pleading for witness. Snowmelt trickled in silver threads alongside, carrying the faint chemical tang of tainted earth, remnants of the dumps seeping into everything. Jax's mind raced with fragments. Ellie's whisper in the shed about the reporter, the note's faded ink, Tommy's recorder capturing lies that could topple empires. She'd seen the barrels firsthand, workers vanishing after questions, water turning foul in nearby streams. The shell company, faceless, funded by backroom deals, had targeted her to silence the spark, using the storm as cover to snatch them from the cabin. But the Iron Promises code burned brighter, expose the rot, protect the vulnerable, honor the chain that bound them all. Tommy stirred on the bike behind Razor, lifting his head to peer at the riders encircling them, leathers scarred from battles past, patches gleaming with the serpent emblem. "Are they, like you said, Mom, the Promise Keepers?" His voice was thin, carried forward by the wind, but it pierced Jax like sunlight through clouds. Ellie nodded, her hand squeezing his. "More than that, kid. They're family, the kind that rides through hell." The words hung in the rush of air, stirring murmurs among the brothers. Tank, riding shotgun on Jax's flank, flashed a thumbs up, his beard splitting in a rare grin that softened the granite of his face. Highway 17 loomed ahead, a black ribbon snaking toward the horizon, flanked by chain-link fences and billboards hawking false dreams of development. The chopper's feed sharpened, the SUVs converging on a low-slung warehouse at the edge of a derelict industrial park, floodlights flickering to life against the encroaching dusk. Perimeters lighting up, reinforcements inbound, 8 tangos visible, plus civvies in suits, Razor reported. Jack signaled a pull-off, the convoy banking into a concealed overlook, engines cutting to a predatory hush. Boots hit pavement as they dismounted, the air cooling with the sun's dip, carrying the distant hum of generators and the sharp bite of ozone from high-voltage fences. Huddled over Razor's tablet, the map glowed with overlays, entry points, blind spots. The warehouse's blueprint pulled from public records twisted by club hacks. Ellie stepped forward, her stance steady despite the ordeal, pointing to a service door. "That's where they haul the waste. Nights only. Undercover. I logged shipments. Timestamps. It's all on my phone if they didn't smash it. Her voice held steel, the quiet fire Jax remembered from club gatherings, where she'd mend a brother's gash with steady hands and sharper words. Tommy clung to her leg, eyes wide at the tactical dance, but a spark of awe flickered there, the boy glimpsing the shield his mother had always promised. "We go in quiet, extract evidence, call it to the light," Jack said, voice low, meeting each gaze in turn. "No blood if we can help it. These suits crumble under truth. Not bullets, but if they force our hand—" Nods rippled through the group, the unspoken vow thickening the air like exhaust. Tank clapped Jax's shoulder, the impact a jolt of solidarity. "For Ellie, for the kid, the promise holds." They split into teams, scouts to cut power, breach crew for the core, perimeter to box the exits. Jax led the breach, heart sinking with the fading light, the pendant's weight a compass pointing true. They moved like phantoms, shadows elongating across the lot as twilight bled into the sky. The warehouse squatted like a beast, corrugated walls humming with hidden life, the scent of oil and rust mingling with something fouler, chemical residue wafting from loading bays. Jax's team slipped through a chain-link gap, Razor disabling a camera with a quick EMP pulse from his pack, the lens going dark with a pop. Inside the fence, crates loomed, stamped with the shell company's logo, lids loose enough to reveal glimpses, sealed drums, manifests scribbled with falsified routes, photos of dump sites pinned to clipboards, Ellie's work, documented in secret. A guard rounded the corner, flashlight beams slicing the gloom, but Tank's arm hooked him silent, zip tie snapping wrists before a word escaped. They pressed on, the service door yielding to a muffled pry, hinges whispering surrender. The interior was a cavern of steel and shadow, conveyor belts idle under harsh fluorescence, the air heavy with the metallic tang of machinery at rest. Voices echoed from an office at the far end, suits barking orders, panic edging their tones. "The bikers? How? Secure the drives. Burn everything." Jax signaled the rush, boots padding soft over concrete, the team fanning out to cordon the space. They burst into the office, doors splintering under controlled force, pistols leveled but unfired. 3 men in crisp shirts froze behind desks piled with ledgers and laptops, faces paling at the wall of leathers. "Iron promise," Jack stated, voice echoing like judgment. "Your game's up. Ellie's evidence, the boy's safety, hand it over and the law gets the truth clean." One suit, silver-haired and sweating, reached for a drawer, but Razor's glare stopped him cold. Tablet already syncing drives wirelessly. Ellie pushed past, Tommy at her side, her finger jabbing a manifest. "This proves the poisons, the rivers, the farms ruined. You thought a storm could bury it?" Her words cut deeper than any blade, the suits slumping as the weight of exposure settled. Outside, sirens wailed distant, Razor's anonymous tip to clean badges, the kind who still honored oaths. The brothers secured the room, evidence bagged, the web unraveling thread by thread. As they exfiltrated, the warehouse lights dimming behind them, Jax knelt to Tommy's level, the boy's eyes reflecting the club's unyielding light. "You called at 2:57, kept the promise alive." Tommy nodded, a small smile breaking through. "Mom said you'd come." The convoy reformed under stars pricking the velvet sky, engines roaring, victory tempered by the road still ahead. Trials, testimonies, the full light of justice. But in that moment, the chain felt whole. Redemption's ride, etching a legacy in the dust of the fallen dark. The warehouse's shadow stretched long into the night as the iron promise melted back into the darkness. A convoy of ghosts slipping through the industrial sprawl toward the open highway. Jax rode at the rear now, guarding the flank with Tank's massive presence beside him, the Harley's low rumble a counterpoint to the fading wail of sirens converging on the site. Evidence bags bulged in saddlebags, manifests, drives, photos of poisoned streams. Proof that would drag the shell company's secrets into the unforgiving glare of daylight. The air cooled sharply, carrying the crisp bite of river mist and the faint, acrid echo of the warehouse's diesel heart, now silenced by their hand. Ellie rode tandem with Razor up front, Tommy nestled between them, his small form silhouetted against the bike's headlight like a figurehead on a ship of salvation. The boy's earlier cry had forged something unbreakable in the group, a quiet vow exchanged in glances and nods as they peeled away. Jax watched them through the mirrors, the pendant's chain now looped around his wrist alongside the blue scarf. Symbols intertwined like the lives they'd reclaimed. Redemption wasn't a thunderous clash, it was this, quiet extraction, truths unearthed without unnecessary scars, the club's code etched in every careful mile. Highway 17 unfurled northward, stars wheeling overhead in a vast, indifferent canopy, the moon casting silver paths on the asphalt that gleamed like veins of iron promise. The chopper's drone faded as Razor banked it home, its feed confirming the suit's capture. Clean badges swarming the warehouse, arrests rippling through the night, like stones skipped across still water. No shots fired, no brothers detained, just the weight of exposure doing the work, the kind of justice that lingered longer than any brawl. Jax's radio crackled softly. "Nomad, feeds show the head suit in cuffs." Ellie's logs match the manifests, rivers tainted, farms failing. This breaks their grip wide open. He keyed back, voice steady over the wind's rush. "Good work. Rendezvous at the safe house. Keep eyes open, tails could still slither." The response was a chorus of affirmatives, engines harmonizing in the distance, a family chosen thundering through the dark. Memories flickered with the passing lights. Ellie's laugh at a long-ago rally, Tommy as a toddler tugging at his boot, the hospital's sterile hush where the promise was born. Jax had run from it then, the road a blur of evasion, but tonight it circled back, completing the loop with a gentleness that eased the old scars. The safe house emerged from the tree line, an unassuming cabin on the club's outskirts, its logs weathered like a faithful elder, porch light flickering welcome through the pines. Bikes pulled in one by one, engines sighing to silence as riders dismounted, the gravel crunching under boots like applause, subdued. Steam rose from cooling exhausts, mingling with the wood smoke from a ready fire pit. The scent grounding them in the now. Tank built the blaze with practiced hands, flames leaping to life and casting warm glows on faces etched with the day's toll. Sweat-streaked leathers, eyes bright with the quiet triumph of oaths kept. Ellie eased off the bike, legs steadying as she helped Tommy down, his red mitten now tucked in her pocket like a captured flag. The boy hesitated, then ran to Jax, wrapping arms around his waist in a hug that carried the weight of years unspoken. "You saved us," like Mom said. Jax knelt, ruffling the kid's hair, the gesture simple but profound, bridging the gap time had carved. "We all did. The promise is bigger than one rider." Ellie approached, her bruised face softening in the firelight, the pendant catching sparks like stars reclaimed. "I kept it close all these years, thought you'd forgotten." Her voice was a whisper laced with the raw edge of survival. Jax shook his head, the fire's warmth chasing the night's chill from his bones. "Never. Just took a long road to get back." Brothers gathered round, passing thermoses of coffee laced with something stronger, stories murmuring low, tales of the bluff's breach. The warehouse's fall, the chain that held when all else frayed. Razor synced the evidence to secure channels, anonymous drops to journalists and watchdogs, ensuring the rot spread no further. Tank raised his mug. To Ellie, to Tommy, to the family that rides eternal. Mugs clinked, the sound of vow renewed, laughter threading through the gravity like light through storm clouds. As the fire died to embers, Ellie pulled Jax aside, the pines whispering overhead, their needles rustling in a gentle breeze that carried the river's clean song. The company's done, but the land, it needs healing. Tommy and I will stay close now, help fix what they broke. Her eyes held the horizon, fierce with purpose. The woman who'd woven iron chains into scarves, now ready to mend the world. Jax nodded, the weight lifting from his shoulders like mist burned away. The club's with you, always. Tommy joined them, sketching in the dirt with a stick, a new drawing of bikes under stars, the serpent emblem proud at its heart. Dawn crept in soft, painting the sky in hues of rose and gold. The first bird song piercing the quiet. The convoy stirred, engines warming for the ride home, but this wasn't an end, just a turning point, promises evolving into legacies. Jax mounted up last, the Harley purring beneath him, Ellie and Tommy waving from the porch, their silhouettes framed by the cabin's light. The road called again, but now it led forward, unburdened. The iron promises thunder a beat of belonging that echoed in his soul. In the miles that followed, word spread through the network, farms alerted, waters tested, the shell company's empire crumbling under the flood of truth. Jax rode with the wind at his back, the pendant secure, knowing some debt settled not in fire, but in the steady glow of honor reclaimed. The open road stretched endless, a canvas for more stories, more chains forged in loyalty's fire, and in quiet moments he'd hear the 2:57 a.m. plea not as a ghost, but as the spark that brought him home. Thank you for riding with us to the end. If this tale of promises kept stirred your heart, subscribe for more journeys of courage and unbreakable bonds. Let's keep the thunder rolling together.